So in this video tutorial, we're continuing with the deployment of the JavaScript application. Here we're testing the Fire API in Postman, and later we will be writing out a JavaScript application. Previously, we had deployed the Azure API for Fire and registered the client application. So now we're ready to make sure that the Azure API for Fire is set up with the client application. So to check that the Fire metadata endpoint is working from the Azure API for Fire, we will use this link in Postman to make test calls to the API. So what's Postman? Postman is basically an API development tool which helps to build, test, and modify APIs. So I'm going to open Postman, and we're going to have that link to test the endpoint. So we're going to click send. And success! We have gotten the capabilities statement. Good job, team. This means that the setup is working correctly so far. So now let's try to get patient information. So we're going to use basically the same link, but at the end we're going to put patient. Note, we should get an error here, as patient information is something that is very sensitive, and we should have a token to access this. So we're going to click send. And if you see here, we got an error. It says it's basically because we don't have an access token, and it's an authentication failed error. So in order to gain access, we need to get an access token. And to get an access token, we need to go under authorization. We're going to select OAuth 2, and we have to make a token. So let's just give this name token 3. And there's a bunch of information that we have to fill out. Don't worry, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to use the information we got from when we were setting up the client application. Remember, I made note that we should save our client ID and tenant ID. We're going to be using here. So we're going to be using it basically in this format. Let me see. So these are all the fields we're going to be filling out. We're going to be filling out the token name, the grant type, and everything else. So basically here, we're going to give it a name, which is token 3. The grant type is going to be authorization code. Callback URL. The callback URL has Postman OAuth 2 callback, so that's good. The auth URL, we're going to have login, Microsoft Online, then we're going to have the Azure tenant ID. This was my tenant ID. And then we're also going to have the Azure tenant ID and then the server name. So here we have our server name. In our case, it was demonstration. So if we look here, we have the tenant ID and the name. And if we go to the access token URL, the access token URL, you just have to enter your tenant ID. As you can see, we did that here. Client ID, this is the client ID that we copied from previous steps. So this is our client ID. The secret, we can keep that empty, scope empty, state 123, and we're going to only use the client authentication as in client credentials and body. So I'm going to select get new access token. And here I need to sign in with my credentials. I'll pause it here. After I'm done signing in, I'll get back to you. Alright, I already entered my Georgia Tech information. I'm going to click proceed, and then I can select use token. So now when I use token, if I press send, I'm not getting an error anymore. As you can see, I'm getting a bundle. And this is good. This means that we have access now. We're not getting authentication failed errors anymore. Now we're going to post a patient into the Fire server. So to do this, we're going to go to the body, and we're going to go to raw, and we're going to enter a JSON text. So we're going to get this patient information from the tutorial on Microsoft Docs that has testing the Fire API. If you go down here, we're going to have the patient code that we're going to use to post a patient into the Fire server. So I've copied the code there, and I'm going to paste it. Oh, apparently I didn't copy it. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here, and we can beautify it. But the main thing we want to do here is we actually want to post this patient into the server. So I'm going to post it. And now that I've posted it, if I do a get, I should get James. So if I scroll down here, you can see that James is a part of the body. It's been added to the Fire server, so now we have access to him. And yeah, we got James in our list. So now we're going to write the Azure Web Application to read the Fire data. Since we're able to connect to the Fire server and post the patient data, we can write, or more accurately, use the provided code to create a web app that will read the Fire data.